Hi, I'm Amy Wilkins, leadership coach, former media exec, and your host of Thriving in the Messy Middle. This is a space for women leaders navigating those in between seasons, the moments when things feel uncertain, stretched, or messy, and you're trying to find your footing without losing yourself. Some episodes are conversations with remarkable women leaders sharing the lessons they've learned along the way. And other times, it's just you and me, slowing things down and naming what's really going on. Think of this as a place to reset, reflect, and reconnect with what matters most. Because thriving isn't about having it all figured out, it's about learning how to grow, lead, and move forward, even when things feel messy. Oh my goodness. I am so excited to be here with you, Adrienne.
Me too.
I met Adrienne at a networking event, and it was a pretty immediate connection. And I'm choosing that you will just always be in my life from now on, just so you know.
You're stuck with me.
What I'm gonna just share very little, and then I want you to just dive in and share a little bit more about who you are and what you bring to the world. I met Adrienne because she is a coach, right? But she started as a lawyer and is actually gonna be sharing her journey and where she is now. And she's also a first gen trailblazer. So I really want you, Adrienne, just to share whatever it is you think that we need to know about you.
I love that phrase, first gen trailblazer. I'm going to borrow that. So thank you. And thank you for the warm invitation. And just to echo the gift of showing up because you never know who you're going to meet. And now, like I said, and you said, we're connected, we're stuck with each other in the best possible way. What I would share is along that first gen trailblazer thought, and I'm the proud daughter of immigrants from Colombia, South America. The first one born in the States, in New York to be specific, lifelong New Yorker. I'm also the firstborn in my family. I was an only child for 9 years, and I have a sister who's 9 years younger. So I have some of the traits of an only child, and then definitely a lot of the older child and a lot of the firstborn. So I'm an interesting medley. And I'm also the first to graduate college, to become a lawyer in my family, which I've always treated as a huge honor because it was an opportunity to inspire those who came up after me to pursue their dreams. But and we'll talk about it. It also came with a heavy burden, which I didn't recognize until I was way further in my life and career. But it definitely created some pressure in terms of feeling like you're on a pedestal and there's not a lot of room for error. Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, I'm curious what had you choose the law profession?
Such a great question. So, as a daughter of immigrants, I think I have found no matter where your families are from, it's very common to focus on education. So, education was a non negotiable. My career choices were doctor, preferably, or lawyer, distant second. So when I was 5 years old, you'd ask me, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" "Oh, pediatrician, because I want to be a doctor and I love kids." So that was the story that followed me
At
along
5?
at 5. So it was, I mean, they
Okay.
did a good job with the brainwashing, indoctrination, whatever you want to call it.
That's great, yeah.
And then I got to college and signed up for all the pre-med first year courses and quickly found that it was not in alignment with my natural abilities. I would skip other classes to really study and try to memorize organic chemistry and biology. And as most colleges, you have a midterm and a final. So everything counts in those two exams. And I remember walking in the huge lecture hall for my midterms, and everyone's, I mean, I'm dating myself, but we're in good company. We had the blue books and you had to write by hand. And people are filling up these books ferociously writing, and I'm looking around. Am I in the right room? Because I had nothing, like just a blank. And I ended up on
Yeah.
academic probation. So when I looked at where had I done well, it was the poli sci classes where I would borrow people's notes, but that was where my natural tendencies lied. And so I just made that pivot. I'm like, all right, my only other option, which of course there were many, but that's what had come in with, was the law. And I actually enjoyed law school. It was a great time. So I'm happy that I did make that pivot when I did.
So that's a lot for a young person to actually have to make that kind of pivot. But I'm curious what you got from that kind of pivot that you carried with you throughout.
Such a good question. I hadn't really thought of what I got out of it, but looking back, definitely that I had this resilience within me. So, yes,
Mhm.
academic probation was a failure, right? I mean, risking losing scholarships, risking getting kicked out of school, and then having to dig my way out of, I mean, it was like a 1.97, I'm not gonna lie. So to
Yes.
end up on the dean's list by the time I graduated took a lot of focus and dedication. But
Yes.
so I would say what I took from it was that I could accomplish things. I could do the hard things, and the failure didn't define me.
Yeah. Can I share what I'm also hearing from that?
Please.
That sometimes we are out of alignment with a path and being able to actually see that, hey, it's actually the path that's not, it has nothing to do with me,
I love
right?
that.
Like I have a different path. Anyway, that's what I took away from your story.
Thank you. I love that too.
Let's look at from a career perspective, a time when things were messy. Could be recent, could be earlier, what you choose. But I'd love to hear what that was like for you and also what happened on the other side.
Definitely. So 2 come to mind, one about 20 years ago and one this summer. So picking up on the theme of alignment, I'll start with the one 20 years ago. So in addition to being the first lawyer in my family, I didn't have a point of reference as far as different practice areas to go into. So I picked litigation because that's what I saw on TV. And as it turns out, it was not in alignment with who I am. I don't like conflict. I don't like being adversarial. I like bringing people together. I'm a great networker. I pride myself on being to connect with people and connect others and being of service, but I didn't know that there were other options. So I went into litigation, practiced at my first firm for 5 years, moved to my second firm. And thankfully, and I always give her credit, one of the partners pulled me aside and shared she did not think litigation was my passion. To which I responded, "Is it anyone's passion?" And to her credit, she said people get excited about a new case and just the process of discovery and the back and the forth. Whereas my tendency was, how can we mediate? How can we find a resolution? And that kind of defeats the purpose of a
Yeah.
hardcore litigator. But it was a gift because it sent me on this journey of, well, now what do I do? 10 years in is a long time. By that point, people
Mhm.
are who are in law are usually trying to become partner if they've stayed at a firm. And I just assumed that was next, even though I didn't really know what that would mean. But now this was a curveball. And so it really forced me to reflect inwardly. Well, what would I want to do? What does it look like to do something different, but still within the law? And through networking, I met another incredible woman who worked at IBM, and I we got to work on a convention for a bar association. So she got to know me, I got to know her. And so when an opportunity presented itself at the company, she said, "Hey, there's an opening. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Well,
Mm.
okay." It was doing transactional work, something I'd never really done. And I said, "Let me throw my hat in the ring and see what happens." And I was able to create a story around how my experience as a litigator would be a value add because I could anticipate where the pitfalls would be versus getting stuck in the minutia that perhaps somebody else who'd only done deals would be focused on.
Yeah.
And it turned out
Yeah.
to be a great run, 16 years, lot of adventures. So yeah, that was a messy
So,
moment that ended up pretty good.
yeah. No, it's interesting because you have another story, but the times that we really do find ourselves out of alignment, the fact that somebody came forward and was willing to say that to you, which opened up a different path, right? I also heard you say something about networking, right? And I'm curious, like what role it sounded like that played an important role because it's somebody that you had been networking with. Was that something that happened naturally for you, or was that something you had to like really make yourself do?
It was a combination. So
Mhm.
definitely there were opportunities both in college and then in law school. There would be events that were hosted. And so you're on a budget, there's free food and drink. Okay, I'll go. And then you kind of find yourself there and you just make conversation or people come up to you and start talking. And so it became just a way to connect with people, but I never understood until way further that there's an intentionality behind networking in
Yeah.
terms of not just what you can do for me, but what might I be able to do for you? And I
Yeah.
think for a lot of people who struggle with networking, right? Like, oh, it feels transactional. I don't like it. It just small talk. When you take it into the perspective of how can I potentially help someone, right? Maybe it's introducing you to someone, maybe it's giving you some feedback, whatever the case may be, takes that pressure off.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. And it certainly paid off in that instance,
Yes,
right?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I think you said that you had another messy middle moment that you might want to share.
For sure. So this is my most recent messy middle moment. And it was in April of this year. I was at a company that I really enjoyed what I was doing. I'd been there 3 years. They were very supportive of my efforts to become certified as a personal and executive coach. And I was leading this team. Like it was just wonderful. And the company was in education technology. So super aligned with the mission, and I'm packing for a trip to Boston to meet with my team and the legal team. And I hop on a Teams call with my manager, the general counsel. And I had gotten a heads up that she wanted to meet with each of her direct reports before we headed to Boston. So in my mind, I thought, oh, there must be a change in the C suite. So I hop on the call and I'm like, oh, who's getting fired? Who's leaving? To which she was like, why would you say that? And fast forward, it turned out my role was getting eliminated. And that came
Mm.
totally out of the blue. We had, I thought, come on the other side of a massive reorg and outsourcing exercise. We'd had to eliminate roles in the legal department. No group was spared. But we had moved into okay, now we're right sizing the ship. We're going to be really focused on what comes next. So
Yeah.
it wasn't even remotely on my radar. So talk about
Mm.
a messy middle moment.
And so what did it look like coming through that?
So, first of all, I just did my post yesterday on LinkedIn, finally sharing.
Yeah.
It's been marinating in my head and
I had a feeling.
yes.
Yeah.
And it was in the moment I thought, don't cry. That was really important to me. Keep my wits
Mhm.
about me and reserve the right to come back with questions because of course you're just what has happened, did I hear you correctly? And I navigated that, and as soon as I hung up I like managed to catch my husband before he was heading out, and I mumbled, oh, my job was just eliminated. I don't know how he
Yeah.
understood me, but he dropped everything, took me in his arms, and then it was like a release of just the tears that were building up, like that emotion, which is important, right? I think so many times, especially as women, we want to be strong and we want to stiff upper lip, whatever phrase you want to put in there, but it doesn't serve us because otherwise it's just going to be bubbling here. And every time you want to talk
Mhm.
about it or someone asks you how you're doing, like the waterworks, and
That's
definitely letting it out. And then the next part was figuring out how to tell my daughter. So she was 16 at the time, she's now 17. And how was I going to present this to her in a way that was almost like a teachable moment, right? Because
mm,
things are going to happen. Doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how good you are. And then
right.
how do you show up? That's what will define you. And I ended up learning from her. She comes home, I'm preparing. I'm like, all right, I have some news to share. And, I'm a little nervous about sharing this news with you. And she's like, did someone die? I'm like, no. Is someone sick? No. And she's like, okay, what is it? And so I tell her, and she's like, do we have to move? I was like,
Yeah.
no. She's like,
Yeah.
all right, you're going to be great. More tears.
Oh, I was just gonna I'm crying. Yeah, it's like the wisdom of babes, right? Oh my goodness.
Just put it into
Yeah,
context. No one's
perspective.
dying. No one has died. No one is dying. We
Okay.
don't have to move. We'll figure it out. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Yeah.
so from there, then it was a question of, okay, now I get to focus on my coaching business. This must be, I'm a woman of faith. So God, universe, whatever you believe in, pushing me because I probably wouldn't have done it on my own. So I just went all
Yes.
in on the coaching, landed great clients and speaking engagements. I'm like, this is amazing. Rational part of my brain kicked in. Okay, you don't want to be reckless, right? You don't want to be irresponsible because candidly, I was and remain the main breadwinner, which came with providing the benefits. And it's that insurance piece that was really holding me back. But
I hear you.
I reached out
Yeah.
to the recruiter who placed me. And again, they placed me 3 years ago, but we maintained the relationship over the years and shared with them honestly what had happened. They happened to be working on an opportunity that, didn't necessarily light me up. And I wasn't sure I even wanted to go straight into another law job. But I said, you know what? Let me update my resume, see what happens. And long story short, I'm starting that role on Monday.
That is so great. So, what do you think it took during that in between phase? Because you said something like it doesn't matter why you're no longer at a company, right? That is something that, people feel like even shoot, even when they're like, I have to get out of here and I quit, even though like it doesn't really matter. There's that period where you need to heal a little bit from the disappointment. Yeah.
Definitely.
Was there anything, yeah, that you saw that supported you the most while you were doing aside from those beautiful hugs from your husband and daughter?
Yes. So I doubled down on making sure I was getting the coaching that I needed to make sure my brain was in the right space. The other piece I will add, and it came about through the coaching, was allowing time to grieve. And we had talked about this in passing, but it's something that I think is so important because you go into autopilot, right? Like your adrenaline kicks in. You're like, okay, I must get another job. I must do this. Let me get on LinkedIn. Let me apply to a bunch of jobs. And meanwhile, there needs to be that space to grieve the loss because it's a loss. Suddenly,
Yep.
the people
Yep.
I was seeing pretty much every day, you spend so much time with them, were gone. And most of them
Yeah.
didn't reach out. And that hurt. It
Mhm.
stung. And then I realized, wait, I've been that person who didn't reach out when someone
Yeah.
else lost their role. And so now I was like, oh, I get it. And I'm
Yeah.
going to be the person who reaches out going forward because you need that, right? It's no,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry this happened to you. You were amazing. I really enjoyed working with you. All those little deposits helped the
Yes.
healing. And there were amazing people who surprised me, like people who I was like, they liked me. They liked working with me, who reached out, whether it was Slack messages during that last 2 weeks or on
Mhm.
LinkedIn. My assistant, who we worked with for a short period of time, she sent me a beautiful handwritten card. And you're just
Yeah.
flooded with love. And then the other piece too was keeping my circle small. So usually that type of news, I would call my mom, I would call my sister, I would call my friends. Can you believe this happened? And thankfully, I knew that was not going to serve me because they'd want to help, right? They'd be worried for me. And I didn't need that energy. I didn't need to manage their energy, their feelings. So it was a super small circle of people who knew what had happened. And then it gradually expanded until now. Whoever sees me on LinkedIn knows.
And we're talking about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So much goodness in what you just shared, starting with taking that time to grieve, like that there is a loss regardless of, and that that's the thing that we rush.
Yes.
And when we do that, it impacts us because we bring it with us to the interviews. That's the energy that we bring, right? And that grieving period is different for everyone. Right, and I
100%.
think people wanna be like, "Didn't I cry yesterday? Aren't I done with this?" And it's maybe not, and that's okay. Like, how do I, like, know when I'm done grieving? You'll know, but it's not gonna be like, "Next Tuesday's gotta it's gotta happen," right? It's gonna happen how it happens, yeah. And that circle, who you tell to support your energy as you're processing something. Everybody doesn't need your story.
Yes.
And I think that I notice with folks who I'm talking to who might be in these transition periods, what do I tell them? What have they earned the right to know? You get to decide how much you share about this. And when you're ready to share it all, you will. I'm intrigued by, 'cause I don't know, maybe it's me, but like this whole like lawyer and coaching thing, is that really it doesn't seem like
It
it's
goes.
it's a fit. Yeah, it's ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So
Tell me about that.
it's fascinating because I discovered coaching during the pandemic. I was definitely in a rut. Adam Grant had written about it precisely during the pandemic,
Mhm.
and it gave me such relief. He called it languishing. So you're not really depressed, you're not really
Mm,
right, but it's just meh. That's literally the word he used. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, definitely, that's where I'm at." And so I heard a woman speak, she said she was a coach, I called up and we started working together. So I was really looking to work on myself, the people pleasing, the procrastinating, the relying on external validation to confirm
mhm.
that I'm worthy, that I'm good enough, right? And
Yeah.
what I found happened was because suddenly I've heard it described when you have your head in the sand, you take it out, that hole closes. So you can put your head back in the sand, but it won't be the same hole. And that was what happened, where suddenly I was like, oh, I can't unsee what I've learned. And I now bring it everywhere I go. And so at work, when I would notice people responding a certain way, or my internal clients all, oh, this is urgent, I was able to show up with this compassion. Wow, that must be hard
Mhm.
for them. They're under so much pressure to close this deal. Like they're getting pressure from
Yeah.
all sides. And instead of being annoyed, like I usually would be, why'd you wait till last minute? Why didn't you loop me in sooner? Why are you trying to give away everything? Like grow a pair and
Yeah.
say no.
Power through.
Come on, people.
Right.
Have I taught you
Yeah.
nothing? And I was able to show up with just much more calm and not needing
Mm.
to fix it and giving them space. And it was almost magical, right? Because then their like
Yeah.
shoulders came down. They were able to hear what I was saying because I was able to mirror and reflect in a way that mattered to them. Not, well, because there's a risk that we could get, who cares? Can I book the revenue or not? And so to be able to position it like, we could do that, but it'll probably delay revenue recognition. Oh, now I have their attention, right? So the way I communicated was really impacted
Yeah.
in a positive way.
So, like, transformative, that experience having a
A
coach,
100%.
right?
Yes.
I think so many of us who got into coaching because we had a transformative experience, right? And it's like you go, "Oh, why did I wait so long?" And I want everyone to have it, right?
Everyone. Why doesn't everyone know about,
Yeah.
right? It's like you have the secret to the universe and you're not gatekeeping. You're like, here it is. And they're like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, oh my God, it's like you don't have to do this by yourself. And especially because we get in a swirl where whatever that story is we're telling ourselves it's like we reinforce it and it's on a loop.
Oh, yeah.
And when something's on a loop and we're in some sort of negative swirl loopy thing, the only option in that moment is to say, is there a way to interrupt this? And the interruption has to be a new action, something I haven't done before. So I love that. I love that. I didn't know your journey to coaching. That was really fun to hear that. What's something that you would have said or would say to your younger self?
I would say invest in yourself, money, time, resources as often as you can, as early as you can, and
Mm.
repeat, repeat. Because
Oh,
waiting for someone else to do it for you, I mean, it's great if it happens, but then you're conditioning your growth, your progress, your expansion on somebody else footing the bill. But when you say, no,
yeah.
no, this is important to me, let me
Mm.
see what it looks like. And you start small, right? It could be,
Yeah,
a 3-month engagement with a coach. It could be going to that conference or event that you're like,
that's
oh,
right.
that speaker's going to be there. I've heard them on YouTube.
Yeah,
I'd love to see them live. And
right.
just showing
Yep.
up, but being willing
Yeah.
to, because if you're willing to invest in yourself, it just opens you up to other people pouring into you.
I love that. I think this is my line. You are the most worthwhile project you will ever work
Oh,
on. Right? If we could treat ourselves like that all the time, right? And we don't,
we
right? It's
don't.
like other things get our attention, not
Yeah.
us. Join an industry organization, join a committee, get active where you're actually starting to give back because it will support you in ways that you like can't even imagine,
Sure.
right? So there's just so many tricks and ways that you can support yourself through those tough times.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And full circle, because I volunteered to work on that planning committee for that event, was how I got my first transition out of the law firm, right? It wouldn't have happened otherwise, or it would have taken a lot
That's
longer.
There are times when people will say, "Oh, I don't have time for that." There will come a time when you will have wished that you had taken the time,
Yes.
right? So I'm encouraging you to consider it now. It's you can't stop somebody from not finding their own way through their messy. But boy, that is such a savior when you can have folks around you. So anything else that you would want to impart with our audience?
It really comes down to finding your people that you can be yourself with, because no matter who you are, no matter what your journey is, we walk around with a certain filter, right? You read the room, you adjust. Maybe you're a comedian, but you're in the serious boardroom, so you need to adjust. Find the people where you can really just take that filter off, remove it, and just be yourself in a judgment-free zone where they're going to
Mm.
be there to cheer you on, but then also lovingly point out that you have broccoli in your teeth.
The people that really have your back. Yeah. Adrienne, thank you so much for this conversation. The takeaways are numerous and we will be recapping it all in our show notes and including how you can connect with you, follow you certainly on LinkedIn or wherever else you'd like them to follow
Sure.
you. And I'm trying to think of because there are so many nuggets, what I really got from you is the importance of the people that are around you, right? And knowing when to expand that group and knowing when to keep it tight because that's what supports you, protecting your own energy, just really powerful. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope something you heard gave you a little clarity, or maybe just a sense that you're not alone in this season. The messy middle isn't something we pass through once. It shows up again and again, and each time we meet it with a bit more awareness, a bit more choice, and a lot more self trust. If this episode resonated, follow the show so you don't miss what's next. And if someone came to mind while listening, share it with them. That's how this community grows. You'll find links and resources in the show notes, and more ways that we can work together at chooseaw.com. And I'll leave you with this reminder. You are the most worthwhile project you will ever work on. So until next time, keep thriving, even in the messy middle.